Test. When I wrote into the organizing committee, they said that because I was asking them if I could share it, if they preferred me to do the presentation in English or Chinese, I was told to prepare it in English. And I do see a few international friends here, so I'll do my sharing in English. I'll promise to speak slower, but unfortunately, when I talk about data, I'm always very excited, so I might speak too fast. And if you guys know that Singapore, we have this thing called Singlish, so I'll try to keep that away. Yeah. So thanks for coming for my sharing session today. Ironically, today is actually Singapore's National Day. So Singapore became independent a while ago. We're still quite young. Yeah. So this is the topic of today. I realized that I got a very non-clickbaity topic, but really thanks for everybody who's here. Okay. So disclaimer, because nowadays I'm working in a larger company, but this is not important. Yeah. Okay, so a bit about me. I purposely wore the same thing that is on the photo here as well. I think the more interesting thing about me is that I actually didn't come from a very technical background. So my background is in economics. I've worked in a few different organizations for the past 15 years. So right now I'm actually a lead data analyst in this company called Tech in Asia. The TLDR is that we are kind of like the tech crunch of Southeast Asia. And I think one interesting thing about me is that because I came from a social science background, so I'm always leaning back towards like using data to look at social issues in that sense. Okay, so why this project? I wrote a few things here. So I think globally, a lot of people think that Singapore's public housing is really great and stuff. And I think it's true. I think in comparison across different cities and stuff, right? I do think that Singapore is doing a pretty good job. But I think the unfortunate thing is that in Singapore nowadays, at least since COVID, and I'll have the data to back it up. This is just some of the stuff that you see in Singapore nowadays. So $1 million flats. So this is in Singapore dollars. So there was a trend. I just kind of like clip a few here and there, but they're kind of covering the same thing. It's that actually Singapore's public housing prices are actually increasing quite a bit. In particular, this is overemphasis on like $1 million homes. So being a data person, right, I was thinking, hey, the raw data is available. Somebody just needs to crunch it. And I felt that rather than let the media kind of like control what I understand, right, I felt that I had the skills and the data is there. So why not just analyze the data? Okay, a bit about Singapore's public housing. It's a bit of a long stretch here, but the TLDR is that Singapore, most people live in public housing in Singapore. So basically these are like houses that are built by the government. They are on a 99-year lease, so it means that in theory, after 99 years, the housing is kind of given back to the Singapore government. But because we are still a very young country, that hasn't really happened yet, I think, although there are certain housing units that I think did hit that limit in that sense. So my topic here is mainly on public housing. And these are some of the stuff here. The last two things that is a bit interesting is that there are actually a lot of conditions if you want to qualify for the Singapore public housing. The first, of course, being a Singaporean or Singaporean like permanent resident. These last 2 points here that I have basically is that once you buy a public housing in Singapore, you have to stay in that unit for at least 5 years before you can sell. So the idea is to ensure that people are not flipping the public housing to kind of like make a quick profit out of it. Okay. So a bit more detail about public housing in Singapore. So commonly, if you guys have any Singaporean friends, you'll commonly hear this term called BTO, built to order, in the resale market. So basically, BTO means that you're buying directly from the Singapore government. Again, a lot of different conditions and stuff like that. But the general idea is that because you're buying directly from the Singapore government, it's usually at a very, very affordable rate. And a lot of times, that is what the Singapore government reminds Singaporeans, that our public houses are really very affordable. And usually that's the benchmark that they use. You can get it very affordably. I don't remember the amount usually, but yeah, it is still relatively cheaper compared to the resale market. So for the resale market, right, basically you're just buying from somebody that owns the public housing. So, and again, like I said, like the person had to own for 5 years first before they actually are able to sell. So a few conditions here and there. Again, like you have to be married, or you can either like buy it as a single, but you have to be 35 years old and above and stuff like that. Won't go too deep into that. Okay. So this is actually where I got the data from. This is an organization called data.gov.sg. So I can't remember when this agency was set up, but basically it's the idea of trying to provide data from the various government agencies. And yeah, I told them that I want to do my part to help spread their word. So 65 agencies, 5,000 plus data sets. I wrote here no API key until they had this thing recently now. So yeah, until September this year, yeah, they will have the API key. The good thing about working so closely with them, right, is that I got my API key as well already. So I can continue to use their stuff. Okay. So in particular, I was using this data set here. I realized that I could actually scroll this. Okay. So again, I was just looking specifically at the resale market. Yeah, some caveats here, like the conditions. So no BTO prices, again meaning that these are just all resale prices here. There's no like specific unit in that sense, so I won't know, oh, actually my neighbor sold for how much. But if you can kind of, if you know a bit, you can kind of reverse engineer because you still have things like address, how big the unit is and stuff like that. They actually made it very easy for non-technical people as well, so you can download it with CSV files. But for people like me who want to have an update on the data set, right, I actually still use like APIs and stuff to kind of call the data sets. Yeah, so I won't go too deep into this here. Okay. Yeah, and actually now, yeah, because again, they kind of have the API keys and stuff, so I kind of updated my slides for this. Okay. So this is basically what I did, at least the core thing that I did. Again, I need to remind myself that this is actually the dashboard here that I made. So this is the tech stack that I use. So I'm actually, again, not a software engineer, barely a competent data analyst. So these are the stuff that I use. And you can see I'm just a single skill pony or what we call it. So I'm using Fast API for my backend and front end. And apparently I also use this thing called Fast API block to write more longer form kind of analysis. The dashboarding, which I have something else that's a bit more like an interactive chart and stuff. Plotly for the interactivities. I'm using GitHub Actions for the daily updates of my data set. So I don't think the government updates their data set daily, but as long as my pipeline is running, right, every time they update it, I will get the latest data from them. And I'm hosting it on Render. It's just because it's the easiest for people like me. Okay. So if there's time later, I can share the dashboard a bit more, because this is actually still live. Unless somebody is trying to hack it, but it's still live. And once in a while, I will still go and look at it just to kind of see how things are like. Okay. There are actually some specific analysis that I want to share. Okay, so yeah, this is as of today. And the thing is that because nowadays things change so fast, right? I won't be surprised if next month I'll be telling everybody that I vibe coded something that's like totally new. But for now, this is the tech stack. Okay. So I want to go deeper into the findings because I think that is the more interesting part. One caveat again is that, again, I'm not an engineer. I couldn't figure out some weird quirks with how the iframe renders. Yeah, but in case if anybody is seeing this, like not during this sharing, right? Okay, so remember just now I mentioned about all the media presses that was talking about $1 million flats in Singapore, resale flats and stuff like that. So I actually took the data and I plotted. So the bar here is actually like the volume. So it's transactions at a per month basis. And the line here is actually percentage. So what we can see here, right, is that if everybody remembers the very horrible history of COVID, right, January 2020 was kind of the start of COVID. And since then, you're looking at the monthly percentages of $1 million flats compared to the overall transactions. It used to be less than 1%. Now, easily as of July, we are looking at about 6%. Again, these are public houses. These are like not like private condos or like private landed homes and stuff, right? And you can see that actually there is quite a bit of a growing trend here. So imagine in the past, like just 5 years ago, where out of 100 transactions, less than 1 is $1 million flat in Singapore. Now, for every 100 transaction, we have about like 5 to 6, out of which are $1 million flats. So interestingly, I kind of did prove, no, I wouldn't say prove, but it kind of does show that, yeah, there's actually more and more $1 million flats. And to a certain extent, it's kind of reflecting what the media is saying. Okay. So that's the first thing. And of course, we realize that actually data, there's a lot of different ways to slice it, right? Oh wait, I realized I didn't show this. Had this here. Yeah, so this is just the quick snippet that I mentioned just now. Okay. So Next up here, rather than looking at just million-dollar homes, I wanted to see, hey, if I'm not going to chase the million-dollar home, maybe I should look at how the overall price structure is like. So here what I did is that I kind of grouped the different housing prices by different price buckets. Again, these are all in like Singapore dollars. So ignore the rest for now. Just looking at the small red bar here, it kind of reflects what was being shown just now, where again there's an increasing percentage of million-dollar flats when I reach here. So at least the number kind of corresponds to that as well. But one thing that I like about this chart, right, is that other than it being produced by me, right, is the sense that you can see that for the blue color bars, which are actually housing prices that were $500,000 and below, they are actually shrinking by the percentage as well. So in 2020, right, about 75% of the public resale flats were less than $500,000. But right now in 2025, actually 75% of our public housing, right, is actually 500K and above. So I did find this thing interesting, although it's kind of sad as well. But basically, yeah, like the whole structure kind of flipped. So like if because there is one narrative, right, where you say, oh, you know, don't look at million-dollar flats, it's just a small percentage. Like, true enough, but if you look at just the composition of our housing prices, it actually feels quite scary as well. Okay. So next chart here. Oops, sorry. Let me just click here. Okay. So one other thing here that I felt was interesting. Okay, this one takes a bit of a lengthier explanation here. But the general idea here, right, is that for this plot, you can see that the different colors actually represent the different years. I have 2010, 15, 20, and 2024. I was looking at just the lowest, you can see in the left axis here, lowest 10 percentile resale prices. And I want to just look at, you can see that in general, if you look at it, right, if you remove the colors, or if, unfortunately, if you're colorblind, like, things look pretty normal, right? But when I look at just 2010 first, so in 2010, like, you can see that most of them, right, okay, I forgot to explain this. So the y-axis is just the resale prices. The x-axis is remaining lease. Again, these resale flats, right, they actually have a lease. So by end of 99 year, they kind of have to be returned back to government. So basically here it means that actually at what time kind of like did these flats get sold? And you can see that most of them were clustering around like 60 to 80, with some that's like really more towards like 90. So when I compare to 2024, you can see that there's actually a growing trend of people who are actually selling very, very early on. You can see that there's the cluster on the right, right? It's basically people who barely kind of stayed in their home for like 10 years-ish. Versus here, these are of course maybe the very, very old flats. Here. So for me here, right, like and of course this, I actually wrote a longer article about this. But one thing that I felt was interesting is that when I just looked at only this small cluster of the lowest 10 percentile of public homes in Singapore, there was this emerging trend where more and more people were actually selling their public homes right after they are able to sell. There's one angle to think about here, right, is that are these people really buying it because they want to live in a public home? Or are they buying so that they can flip it after 5 years, after 10 years, just because they want to have that profit gain? The thing here is that because when you're buying again from the government directly, right, through BTO, you actually get quite a lot of grants and it's just much more affordable. So there's this idea as well about like, okay, again, is the Singapore government doing something that's actually enabling people to have affordable homes? Or are we just enriching a small group of people to be able to get like better, like kind of earn a profit because of all these like grants and stuff? Okay, let me click here. Okay, so for me, right, like, as in this project is, I think, ongoing for quite a few years. Of course, again, when I got busy, I didn't have much time to update it and stuff like that. But I think for me, because right now I'm already running the daily updates already, it's always interesting every time when there's some updates from either the news media or government when they're saying that, oh, you know, we are having more public home launches, or, you know, we are monitoring the home prices, we are looking at certain things and stuff. So for me, right, it's actually quite low effort nowadays. I just need to click on my link and I can just see the updates based on whatever API calls that I've made. And yeah, so this article is actually an article that was referring to Singapore's general elections. So if people don't realize Singapore is actually a democratic country, we do have elections as well. And when people are not happy with the government, they will not choose the government. So there's this kind of like narrative and stuff. Yeah. So for me personally, I just want to monitor to kind of see if the government is really either doing what they're trying to do, or are they really effective in some of the policies that they say would be helping our public home prices. Okay. The other thing that I'm keen to kind of explore further is to not just look at public prices, public home prices, but also private housing prices. The thing is that I did try to analyze. The unfortunate thing is that even though Singapore is small, we do have a lot of agencies, and the private housing prices is actually kind of like housed by a different agency. So like how they do the zoning, how they do the classifications, they're all a bit different. So I try to do analysis, but I'm still trying to figure out how to combine them. For me in particular, I feel that even though about 80% of Singaporeans or Singapore residents are staying in public flats in Singapore, there is still a very rich group of 20% who's not being reflected here. So for me, I think it's quite interesting if I can be able to combine both of them. Yeah, but that's one of the side projects, one of the side extensions that I'm hoping to look at. Okay. Every talk nowadays has to talk about AI. So I did consider, I did try. But so far, I'm not getting very good traction. But I think the wonderful thing about side projects, right, is that you can kind of actually use it to kind of see if there's any interesting use cases that you can kind of come up with, and you have no pressure from your boss or whatever, other than maybe your own motivations. So I was experimenting around with it, but still playing around with it. Okay. And last but not least, this is actually something that I wanted to look at very, very long ago. The words are very small, but the TLDR is that I once was looking at to kind of see, right, if political boundaries would affect housing prices. So a bit of backstory. I think a lot of Singaporeans, right, are always a bit mindful of voting for the opposition party because they're concerned that if their very small constituency, if it becomes under the opposition party, there will be some kind of maneuvering behind where the whole area will have like less funding, will have like, it'll be a bit dilapidated and stuff. And even though everybody thinks that Singapore is quite great, right, that there are still like potholes here and there if you know where to find them. Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that right now, the same government website, data.gov, has actually also posted our political boundaries. So for me, it's basically like I'm just waiting to analyze it, or more of like I'm just find more time to find it, to analyze it. But I think for me, it's kind of like a policy thing, not really kind of having some monetization angle to it. But I do feel that it's kind of interesting to see if some of the narratives or some of the angles that people are thinking about, whether are they true or not. Okay. Yeah. One last bit here as well, because this talk I know is done in Taiwan. So in the past, I actually did try to do some analysis. One is written in Chinese. Oh, I forgot on my internet, sorry. It's okay. Me later, I'll share the link here. So I actually did 2 analysis on Taiwan's property prices as well. And the link still works from what I know. So I would try to like call out like anybody if is interested to kind of do the same thing for the Taiwan housing market. I think the data is actually readily available as well. I think right now it's still, you still have to like manually download it. So there's no API to kind of update it daily and stuff. But I think it's still actually something interesting that you guys can consider. Yeah, I actually did try, but I realized that it takes too much effort for me to read Chinese and to kind of figure out. There's a few interesting quirks. But I guess as a data person, right, it's also interesting because you realize that, it's not just one skill set being able to be replicable across all different domains, even though it's also still housing. But I think it was an interesting experience. Okay, I think, I wanted to end with something impactful, but I don't know if it's impactful or not. During this, I think like 2 to 3 years of like entire project and stuff, right? I think a lot of people have always been asking me, oh, am I gonna monetize? Am I working with property agents to kind of sell the data and stuff? I think for me, I felt that it was interesting because I'm trying to really take control of what is being fed to me. Especially when the data is available, and especially I'm a data analyst who can analyze data. It was a bit jarring and a bit tiring where every other day I would see the media telling me, you you need to buy your flat now. If not, you're gonna be priced out. Like property agents putting ads to say like if you're not gonna do this now, you're gonna miss the boat and stuff like that. So I felt that like it was something that I could do, and I felt that as an analyst, if I were to leave all these kind of narratives to others, I'll really like lose my intellectual autonomy. So that was something that I want to go into, like just analyze and just understand better a bit like Singapore's housing market. Yeah. So I'm on my last slide here. So this is my LinkedIn. Yeah. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you guys are interested. And yeah, I'm also opening the floor for any questions or anything you guys want to ask me further to kind of go deeper in. In the meantime, let me on my internet. Oh, sorry, yes. Sure.
At the very beginning, you said you're talking about the rising percentage of million-dollar homes.
Yes.
Is that just the initial sale from the government or all?
Okay. So those percentages were actually from the resale market. Yeah. So interestingly, the Singapore government actually controls the BTOs, right? Like those prices are pretty controlled by the government. But then again, the government also says that they are pricing those prices based on like the surrounding prices of the public homes there. So it always feels a bit like weird to me. It's like, so you are saying that these are more affordable, true enough, but yet it's also priced with the benchmark of other surrounding public homes, right, which are rising as well. So I'm like, are they really as affordable? But of course, when you look at it at the face value, they really do seem like those that you get from the government directly, they do look much cheaper. But again, there's a lot of caveats, like you need to get married or you're going to get married soon. You need to be at least 35 years and above if you're not getting married. There's so many conditions, I can't remember all of them. But there's a lot of different criteria and the whole process takes very long. I have friends who have to apply for these BTOs and some of them actually, like, they have to wait for easily like 10 years. They are just unlucky to a certain extent. So I have friends who also just got it on their first application. So it's a bit of a windfall in that sense, if you get it or not. Yeah. So that's the issue with how our structure is right now.
And so the initial BTO price is somewhat subsidized. After 5 years, can they sell it for any price they want?
Short answer is yes. Yes. So and which is the interesting part, because the government is trying to say that, you know, like we're letting the market decide on the prices, right? Like if it's a booming economy, people are willing to pay more for it. We're not going to control the market, but they are controlling the supply as well to a certain extent. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, yeah. Yes.
I kind of want to know a bit more about the rules of the BTO.
Hmm.
Just to give context, I'm from UK, and in the 80s they started allowing people in public housing to buy their house, so they were not public anymore. And so then what happened is the people bought the house, and then they sold it, and then eventually, you know, rich people started buying more and more and more houses. So our housing crisis is because anyone can apply for this house, but then it gets sold and then it becomes private. So I want to know, with the BTO, like, are you limited? Because I don't see any problem with flipping it. If it's like only 4 people can buy the house and then they make the profit, okay, that's cool. But the problem is that, you know, rich people doing it multiple times, they just get richer and richer. So are there rules about like the salary or the wealth of the application, and like is it only one time you can get BTO? Can you keep doing it?
Okay. Let me try to remember. Okay, short answer is yes. There's actually quite a few conditions. At least in terms of the income ceiling, if I remember correctly, I think right now, because the first caveat is that usually you have to be married with a spouse. And Singapore is a very traditional country, so your spouse has to be of a different gender. So your combined income with your spouse cannot be more than 12,000 SGD. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think you, if I remember correctly, I think you can, as long as anybody qualifies, right, they can only apply for BTOs twice in their lifetime. And of course, after the first time, right, you have to stay there for at least 5 years before you can sell. So and imagine like you have to bid for it again after that, right? So it could be you bought it, you could have actually waited for 5 years first, bought it, stay for 5 years, maybe wait for another 5 more years before you can bid again, or when you can get your second BTO. Then wait for another 5 years before you can sell. Of course, that's the optimal kind of situation if you hit everything at the first try, right? Yeah, so usually, there's actually one narrative that says that not online netizens, right? They are saying that, hey, why are Singaporeans complaining? Only Singaporeans can buy these public housings, and whatever gain is to that Singaporean household. So isn't it a good thing? Doesn't it benefit Singaporeans? I think if you have enough single engineering friends who are not married, who can't and because they're engineers, so they earn a lot. They themselves easily qualify from they can't qualify because their income are more than 12,000 SGD a month by themselves. So they can't get these BTOs. They can't afford the resale market because it's really just based on market prices. And the resale prices, right, are actually already cheaper than the private housings in Singapore already. So they are kind of like sandwiched in the middle. They can't get BTOs because they don't qualify. They can't afford resale because it's too expensive with the rising prices. And private housing is even worse. So for them, yeah, it's kind of like a crunch.
I think it seems like a pretty good system, but one more question. Okay, the resale market, can an individual own multiple houses?
Short answer, no, no. So especially for public housing, it's a straight no. And in fact, if let's say, okay, I think there are some changes. I can be quite sure that for private housing at least, right now, if let's say somebody owns a private housing and they want to buy a public housing, that cannot happen because you already have one housing. And the next is if you own a private condo and you want to buy another private housing, that is possible, but there's a lot of additional taxes on top of it. So the Singapore government, because actually Singapore is a very small country, so I do understand that we are very mindful of all these kind of like speculations. We don't want people to be like speculating on like housing prices and then end up a lot more people can't afford. So to a certain extent, I would say Singapore's housing policies isn't too bad, to be fair. But I think one thing that's a bit jarring is that the rate of change is actually getting a bit scary, especially this chart here, where looking at this shift in the entire kind of like pricing structure. And to a certain extent, it's kind of like the has and has-nots. I have friends who were lucky, they found their soulmate very early on, and because they were very early on in their career, they were not earning a lot. They managed to get a BTO, and they had kids, and now they're earning a lot, but because they already bought their public housing very early on, they are still staying there. And they kind of have, they kind of, in a way, Singapore is like trying to mold us into a certain direction, right? So I will always say, yeah, those are what the Singapore government wants. You are young, you get married, you give birth to children, you support our population, and you are stuck in Singapore because you bought a home here. You're not gonna relocate most probably, because the home is cheap, and yeah. So there will be, and the thing is that I think because there's also changing demographics, right? One thing about Singapore society is that most people don't move out until they get married. So I have a lot of engineering friends, okay, just friends in general, who are single, are still staying with their parents. This is a norm. This is nothing disgraceful in Singapore. And I guess there's like a lot of changing sentiment where people I want to move out, I want to be independent. Rent is very expensive. I can't afford my own public housing. And there is that kind of sentiment that is, yeah, a bit changing. And I think the Singapore government is trying to kind of see how they can help. There's a lot more new policies. In fact, I think the recent BTO launches, because they are launched by batches, I think they are opening a lot more slots for singles. But because I'm already out of that market, so I didn't really care. But yeah, but I understood that there is more direction. So the things are always changing. And for me, I think it's interesting because as much as the government can say that certain things are changing, to me, the data will speak for itself. Like if the prices are dropping or not. And to a certain extent, I think most people would appreciate that inflation exists and things would kind of change as they are. But sometimes when the government says certain things like, oh, this is a small percentage or whatever, and it's a bit like distant from the ground, like I feel that at least the data speaks for itself. Yes.
Thanks for sharing. And I want to ask that is there any part of the Singaporean like housing market as most from your concern? It's like you just say that to be fair is quite good, but there's some concerning part that you are really worried about that could go like out of hand.
I I would say I won't say there's a particular thing that I'm worried about, but I think there's a thing here that I feel that it doesn't sit right with me somehow, and it's with the idea of the huge windfall effect. Some Singaporeans call it lottery effect. Some people call it windfall effect. Basically, if you fit the Singapore government's mold and you get a BTO very early on, there are some households that are actually having a profit of 1 million SGD, meaning that they got the flat maybe at like 500k SGD and they're selling it at 1.5 million in the resale market. The thing is, some people are like, oh, this is Singaporeans, right? Why do I care so much? I feel that it can be a problem where Singapore is such a small country. Land is really very scarce, and land is really a public good. And we are allowing a small group of people to benefit from the monetization of our public resource. I do feel that it can be a bit dangerous. Yeah, because again, I think Singapore is very built on all our great policies and stuff. And to be fair, I'm not saying that Singapore is like bad now, but I'm just concerned that as things are going down, if we are not able to catch some of these issues until they get worse, when they're much more worse, it might be a bit too late. Yeah, so I think that imbalance can be a bit jarring, and yeah, I think that part is the part that I'm a bit more like it doesn't sit well with me. I wouldn't say that I'm scared or I think that this is not right, or whatever, but it just feels a bit weird for me.
So if I understand right, and you're saying that there are certain types of people that really fit a narrative or just the mold that the government wants, they can like uh, buy the house really cheap, and there and potentially get a lot of money through this process.
Yes, yes.
Without those like stereotypes that diversify enough,
Mm.
without suit everybody's needs,
Mm.
you're worried about this diversity.
Mm. I would say the implications is that could be one angle. I think one other thing about Singapore is that I think as all economies, right, we're always concerned about like our talent pool and stuff. Especially Singapore is a country that always says we have no land, so talent is our best resource. And there are also some discussions among even the more simple groups like let's say single moms. So single moms actually don't fit in this profile because they don't have a spouse. So usually, at least what I understand is that single moms actually get it the worst because they can't qualify for BTO. They have to rent. But because Singapore is very ownership centric, we don't really have a very strong rental market. So it is very, very skewed. So I understand for them it's actually pretty bad. I think there's some government support, but I'm not too sure about that part. So that's one. Another group is the LGBT group. So usually they are priced out. Usually they will have to like kind of get private housing or just rent and stuff. So again, that's another angle. I feel that it's kind of reasonable for the government to try to, like win the support of the core people that they are trying to attract and retain in Singapore, right? Yeah, but I feel that like sometimes if it's a bit too strong of such a nudge, it can be a bit dangerous. Any other questions? All good. Yeah, I would have to say that I think one interesting thing about the Singapore housing prices, right, is that when I looked at the data, one unintended learning that I got was that the Singapore housing prices are really very controlled to a certain extent. Because when I was trying to look at the private housing data, I realized that there were like landed homes in Singapore that cost like 160 million. So I couldn't plot any like box plot or whatever because everything is just being flattened and just a few outliers here and there. So in that sense that when I realized that our public housing prices could actually fit so well in this kind of charts, right? I realized that yeah, indeed, the data does reflect some kind of invisible hand that's controlling everything and stuff. So it's kind of an interesting learning that I didn't expect to see. And that was the reason why it's so difficult for me to try to combine the private and public housing, because one is so well controlled, one is everything is such a nice view, the other one is just going all over the place. And I'm like, I'm not sure how we're gonna handle all this. Yeah, but that's what happens when you're not monetizing on something and you have a real job somewhere else. Let me see. Oh, let me exit here. How do I? Oh, we have an exit. Okay, since I have a bit of time, or actually more like since nobody's chasing me away, there's actually one small thing that I can share. I'm not sure if the audio will work. I'm not too loud, but okay, there's no sound, so don't worry about it. As in like, the sound is okay. Is it loading? Okay, so the sound isn't very important because so this is actually a series about Singapore's public housing. I didn't get a lot of face time, as in, but yeah, I'm showing up. So yeah, so again, I didn't earn any money from anything. But it was just interesting that yeah, I got featured. Yeah, don't hear my voice. Yeah, I always cringe when I hear my own voice. Yeah. So it was just, I got a small segment. I think it's like 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, out of like 6 hours of like video footage. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I do think that like, at least for most Asian societies, we are always very concerned about housing, you know, and stuff. So yeah, so some of the things that I managed to get. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. The reporter actually just found me on LinkedIn and it's like, hey, you're looking at this. Like they wanted somebody that's a bit more independent. So again, not somebody that was representing property agency or not representing the government. Yeah, so if you're interested, can actually look at. It was actually I think 6 episodes on this news channel called Channel News Asia. Yeah, but if you try to find me, it's only 2 minutes somewhere. So yeah, try not to find me. Like there's a lot more interesting stuff about Singapore. They covered things like the construction, how they kept things affordable, some of the supply crunch and stuff. I always cringe when I see this. Took me a while to find the video because I. Oh yes.
Just in this graph, or like it was a monthly graph, I think.
Yes.
There was a dip every year. Is that some kind of cultural thing people buy homes, or?
If I, as in just on any dips, if I understand correctly, it should be. I think it's the other one, right?
In the video.
Okay, I think I can just go to my dashboard. Okay, let me close this. Because, is it here? Here. Is it loading? Let me go. Oh, I think it's this one, for example.
But it was like from 2016 to 2020.
That's the other one, right? Let me check the video. Yeah, because they wanted something that's a bit more. Like, is it further back? Here.
Like it keeps dipping once every year.
Mm.
Is that like in some months people don't buy houses in Singapore?
I can't say for sure in terms of this, but there's definitely seasonality. One of the more common seasonalities that we know as Asians is that there's always this Ghost Month, Hungry Ghost Festival. So usually transactions are lower, but basically it's not auspicious. Basically, you know, I always jokingly say that, you know, like the Americans, like in Asia we have less human rights, but we have more ghost rights because our ghosts at one month leave, whereas you guys only have Halloween, like Halloween, which is like just 1 day. Yeah, but we have one particular month. Usually, sometimes it's like August and September, around that period. But there's also some seasonality with I think early in the year, like during February and March, because that's where usually the Lunar New Year is, and people are just usually cleaning their homes rather than trying to figure out how to get a new home. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Oh, oh, you mean here, right? Yeah. So actually, and actually, I felt that was also one of the interesting things that I learned. There was one other thing that I couldn't fit into this. So for those that are old enough, right, we know that actually Asia had this thing called Asian financial crisis. So the housing prices from 1997 to I think 20 something, right? I think I can't remember which year, was really very bad. And usually that is the year that we will tell property agents to shut up and don't say that the housing price will always increase, because it was like a 10-year period where nothing was increasing, it was just flat. Yeah. So it really kind of depends on how you slice it. I think if you go, like, if you're able to get more data towards the back, right? I think this was the period where it was after the 97 crisis, about a decade later, and then I think things were getting better again. I can't remember, but yeah, there was another crash that caused it to crash again. Before, and then yeah. So the bad thing about Singapore is that we're very small, and we're a very export-driven country. So whatever happens in the West, usually we get it first. be it trade, be it whatever, capital inflows, outflows, and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is actually volume. So yeah, so you can see that, and of course everybody wants to forget this period, right? Where it's like so in Singapore, this is actually I think April and May. So this was where we had this thing called circuit breaker, where Singaporeans were not allowed to leave our homes. But interestingly, there were property agents that were still able to sell their homes without people even viewing the physical homes in person. Yeah. Yeah, so and interestingly, a lot of my friends, again the single friends, they are like lamenting that now they can't get anything that is below 300k SGD for public housing. Like that used to be some kind of like a benchmark and say, oh, you know, like once I hit a savings of about 300k SGD, I will be able to afford. Like of course they are thinking of like just lump sum put it and then like they're not thinking of like mortgage and stuff. The thing about the market is that once you reach a certain age and if you're looking at buying certain homes, might be harder to get mortgage. Because again, 99-year lease, right? If you're getting a home that was being lived in for 30, 20 years, you're left with only a 60-year lease, you most probably can't get a mortgage. So you most probably, so a lot of my friends were actually preparing, I'm gonna just put in 300k, maybe, yeah, because they can't get a loan. But once their time, once they were willing to put in that 300k loan, the 300k amount, there's no more 300k public houses nowadays. Yeah. So this price range was purely based on my own intuition, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about side projects, right? Like you can define in whatever your own way. No boss, no whoever will control you. And I felt this was kind of like the reasonable way I wanted to look at. In particular, it got anchored by, again, the $1 million flats. I really got a bit angsty by all the media outlets that are telling me that, yeah, Singapore houses are getting overpriced. Yeah, hopefully it motivates people to look at whatever data sets is available. I feel that nowadays there's actually a lot of data sets out there. And you can see, right, of course, I did this before all this Gen AI stuff. I think that a lot of times it's just about thinking of a particular narrative and trying to see what kind of analysis you can do and whatever kind of insights you can get. So for me, I would say that I think I did think about trying to monetize, but I think I thought for only like 10 minutes and I gave up. Because one thing is that I realized that there were a lot of people who are really vested in this industry, so like property agents, and there was a certain incentive for them to try to sell property at a higher price because what they earn is actually based on the commission of the final price. So if they could sell a home for $1 million versus for $500,000, they get more selling it for $1 million. So that's also one thing that I feel that it's a bit weird because the incentive is for the property agents to push the prices higher. So they are the ones that are constantly telling you, you know, now there are more $1 million flats. You need to be careful now. If you don't buy it now, your kids will suffer. You know, you're buying it for your kids and stuff like that. Like you kind of like get emotionally like blackmailed to like buy houses in Singapore. Yeah. So again, so that was also the other angle. I wanted to just be looking at the data and just kind of see how things are like, and rather than getting manipulated by people. Oh wow. Cool. Thanks for the questions. I know I talk too much when I talk about data. I'm just excited. Thanks for the questions. Thank you. Thank you.